Hello and welcome in Off the Bench on a Thursday. I'm Nicholas Reed, Mouse. And we got a good show for you lined up today. Paul Fritzer is going to come on at 10:30. We're going to talk college hoops as we are deep into the thick of it here in Cincinnati, who's historically had a really good run of college basketball. And we've got one team that is kind of stealing all the spotlight, but there's another team in town. There might be two teams from Southwest Ohio headed to the NCAA tournament, but they both have to finish the year strong. That, of course, is Wright State, who's in first place in the Horizon League. That is the Miami Redhawks, who, of course, are undefeated. Then we'll talk a little bit about Dayton, talk a little bit about Xavier, talk a little bit about UC. But as always, I am joined with by Stone Shields. Stone, how are you on this lovely Thursday, warm Thursday morning here in the city that never slumbers, Hamilton, Ohio?
Yeah, a little chilly, no doubt. -4 on the way in. My hands like freeze. We had a short walk from the parking lot into our studio, and my hands
running.
Freeze. You've been running?
Yeah. I've been running into I've been parking because I normally park on the street.
Yeah.
But I've parked it in the parking lot.
Right.
And I run in.
Yeah.
Because it's so cold.
So cold.
It's so cold.
Yeah.
And I know it's the most tired, trite, boring conversation, talking about the weather all the time, but it's when you're in unprecedented times, as we are when it comes to this weather. I don't know. It's crazy. I mean, we go from the biggest blizzard I've ever seen to negative degrees. Hamilton City Schools not having school all week today. They already called off.
Seriously?
They didn't have school obviously on Monday. Didn't have on Tuesday, Wednesday, and then last night they called off Thursday and Friday. The reason being because in Hamilton a lot of kids walk to school. And when school is at 7 a.m., even if you do a 2-hour delay, it's going to get up to like 1 degree, 2 degrees. So you can't have kids walking in that. So they just they canceled school, which is interesting based off of recent developments with Hamilton. There's like no school. But it's we got a great show for you today. Like I said, we're going to talk about college hoops. Last night, Stone, I went to a place that you still have never been.
Gina's?
It's my weekly family Gina's dinner, and every time I go there, I think, man, I gotta bring Stone in sometime.
I know, man. Yes.
Maybe we'll go tomorrow. Maybe we'll just do the dang thing. And go tomorrow. Make sure to wedge it out like 3 hours of your day because it's not the quickest lunch.
Yeah.
It's not the quickest lunch at all. And then,
did you go chicken parm last night or what?
I did.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's the same every time. It's just so good.
Yeah.
It's just so good. We had a deep conversation about you ever watch Mad Men?
No.
I was talking with my family about Mad Men, and my dad had some wild takes about some of the characters. Honestly, we won't do that here. But that'd be fun doing. Maybe we'll just go full Bill Simmons and just do a second podcast where we talk about sports or talk about TV shows and movies and whatnot. He recently, Bill Simmons, who's great, recently ranked the most watchable movie of this century, The Devil Wears Prada, which is just hilarious. Just hilarious. And me and my friends talk about it almost every single night. But today we're going to talk about college hoops. The Xavier Musketeers, playing Seton Hall last night, took a big lead. Double-digit lead going into the second half. And what happens? Just as they did on Saturday against St. John's, came out slow. Blew the lead almost immediately. And Seton Hall went on a run that would fuel them for the rest of the game. And this is a reoccurring problem for the Xavier Musketeers, something that we're going to ask Paul about later on in this show. And obviously, there's not much to wedge into the Xavier Musketeers at this point. But it is interesting because this is now a theme that we've seen in a couple of games where they start out really hot, shots are dropping, they're playing well, then they come on out, and yesterday they had the most turnovers that they've had all season long. And that, of course, was something that fueled some success at the tail end of November and the beginning of December for Xavier, was they weren't turning the ball over. And when your roster is where it's at, and there's no need in talking about it any further, but we know where Xavier's roster is at, you can't shoot yourself in the foot, and that's exactly what turnovers are. And, of course, Seton Hall took it to the house after that. Then our University of Cincinnati Bearcats took on the Baylor Bears. And they won that game with ease. Got their third Big 12 win of the season. They're now 3-5 inside of the Big 12. They'll go to Houston this weekend to take on the Cougars, a team that they, had right in the grasp last time they played them. And as I just mentioned about Xavier, well, that's what UC did against Houston the first time they played. Of course, they're going on a road, a very, very tough place to play. But this UC team is continued to be kind of a wild card. There's days where they look like a $10 million roster. And then there's days where you are constantly reminded where the state of the program is. And that is not very great. And that is a team that, once again, is going to be on the outside looking in when it comes to Selection Sunday, when it comes to deciding where people go in the NCAA tournament. This UC team, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see the course that it picks going forward. And we've talked at great length about what they do with Wes Miller, what happens with this roster, and what happens going into next year's. But I am very intrigued to see where this team heads going into the fall of 2026 into the 2026-2027 season. Man, it's crazy to say those years out loud. But the 2026-2027 season going into next year. But luckily for us here in Cincinnati, even with those two teams not up to snuff, we've got the Miami Redhawks. And we've got a really good Wright State team. NKU's in the mix in the Horizon League. Dayton, they seem to be in some sort of purgatory, which Dayton is a fan base that I'm not sure I've ever – when I was growing up, I didn't realize how great of a fan base. I remember when I first started working here at Chatterbox Sports back in 2019. Obviously grew up a Xavier fan. I didn't realize how small the Xavier fan base was. And I was talking with Trace one day, and he told me that Dayton has a bigger fan base than there. I was like, what are you talking about? What are you on, boss? And he might be right. Xavier, Dayton, they sell out UD Arena, which is one of the best places to watch basketball, and it's a shame that they haven't been able to win the A-10 tournament for a long, long time, and it's a shame that they consistently seem to be on the outside looking in of the NCAA tournament. So that is college hoops here in the area. Stone, is there anything to take away from your Cincinnati Bearcats beating the Baylor Bears yesterday?
Not my Cincinnati Bearcats breed. You have created a narrative that lives on within our chat about me being this huge gung-ho UC guy, disrespecting my alma mater, Miami Redhawks. That is not the case. That is a false narrative that you have painted. But I didn't get to catch any of the game last night. But Skilling's back in town. He had so much upside when he came here, and then it just didn't really work out. And then he gets the, they had to just retool after last year and get rid of basically everybody they had besides Day-Day. And, of course, Jizzle ends up returning this year. But, it's good to get a win. You're back over 500. But, that Baylor team, that's not the Baylor team that won the title a few years ago. That's not the Baylor team of the past 2 or 3 years. That is a threat to potentially go on a run in March. That Baylor team's in a really tough spot. And, you won at home, but – I saw some pictures of what the environment looked like there at Fifth Third. Not exactly something that gets you fired up like a Millett Hall environment. But, it's kind of where they're at right now. Hopefully they can piece together a couple more wins. But I don't really have any huge takeaways other than, you should have won the game, and you did. But, okay.
You said that I started a narrative that you are a big UC fan.
Correct.
That's okay, maybe I did. You are an alum of Miami.
I am.
And you have said on this show publicly that you are going to the game this Saturday. Is that still the case to watch your beloved Miami Redhawks?
You know what? We're looking for tickets, Reader. I didn't think it would be so difficult to get into Millett Hall, especially the incredible relationship we have here at Chatterbox with my alma mater, Miami. I thought maybe it'd be a little bit easier, but I'm struggling over here a little bit.
Oh, so how many Miami basketball games have you been to this year?
This year?
Yep.
0.
How many UC games have you been to?
0.
I thought you went to the one. I thought you went to the Louisville game.
That wasn't at Fifth Third, though. It doesn't count.
I said UC basketball games.
Okay, 1.
You could say that I'm spreading a false narrative, but But we know deep down that it's the truth. And sometimes you can't handle the truth.
Great movie. I can talk to you about that movie. That's a great movie.
That is a great movie.
Yeah,
look at you.
movie.
You're a ball knower, Stone.
Yes,
You're a ball knower, Stone.
Yeah.
All right, we had a few questions that we didn't get to yesterday. You don't need to pose them as a we'll just do it. We'll just do it. Where there's a few mailbag questions that were left on the table, and we want to get to all of our beloved viewers that send in these questions. So if you want to go ahead and read one of those out as we wait for Paul at the 10:30 mark.
All right. It looks like we had two more here that we didn't get to yesterday. From our clan of Peanuts characters. Here's a question that says, football is almost done for the year. Obviously, only one game left. Rank your favorite sports weekends that do not revolve around pigskin. Comes in from Schroeder.
Ooh, obviously there's some big ones there. The Masters, everyone's going to put there the first weekend of March Madness. As a baseball guy, I mean, you gotta love opening day. How excited you are! You live and die by every game for that first weekend.
Not really a Chicago opening day, but like a Cincinnati opening day.
Yeah. No, actually, Chicago typically plays on the road to start the season, just because it's cold. And I remember they did play an opening day. I had tickets, had to give them up. It was like 2021. It was when they pushed back opening day a few weeks. And I was going to go, but something came up, couldn't go. My friends went, and they told me how ugly Wrigley Field was, which, like, yeah, if you're going to go to Wrigley Field in April, it can get pretty ugly. But if you go, there's some ballpark chasers that talk a lot of crap about Wrigley Field. Listen, if you don't like Wrigley Field in the summer, if peeing in a trough is too much for you, then you don't love baseball. There's something magical about going to that place in the summer. So the question is what is my favorite weekend of sports that does not revolve around football? Is it? Can I take a fall thing that just exclude the football? Is that allowed?
I don't think Schroeder would mind.
I don't, because like the wild card weekend of baseball is awesome.
Yeah.
But a big reason that's awesome is because there's also college football and NFL football that kind of fuels the fire. I don't care for golf. I do not care for golf, so it's hard for me to say Masters. So I will take what is near and dear to my heart, which is baseball. I will say opening weekend for baseball is my favorite. If I cannot do a football weekend, although wild card weekend is better than opening day weekend, I would say opening day. What say you? Are you a Masters guy? Are you a first round of the NCAA tournament guy?
Yeah, I don't have an outside-the-box answer for you. Those are the top two, I would say, Masters and the NCAA tournament. I'll go Masters as one. Big golf guy. Brooks Koepka, by the way, back in action today. Pretty exciting. Torrey Pines, yep, he's back on the PGA Tour. But, yeah, I would encourage you to just tap in. Watch what Scotty Scheffler's doing. I know Everett Henry, his boy's Rory McIlroy, but yeah, Scotty's on a totally different level here at this point. So I'll say the Masters, just everything about it. The par 3 before it, the green jacket. I buy into all that. Some people laugh at it and say, oh, it's the pageantry. It's too much. It's too exclusive, whatever. I eat it up. I love it. The product on TV looks just green. It's incredible. Bucket list item number 1, I would say, for me.
Do you sign up for the raffle every year?
I don't, no.
Really?
Yeah, no,
I've
never
done it either.
Yeah, I never have.
Yeah,
but
it seems like an easy thing to just do, right? Yeah. Like you just. I don't know, but I assume you just apply on the Masters website and then.
I think so. Yeah.
Man, we are lazy for never doing that. Because even as a guy that says like I'd never if I got the tickets, I'm gonna go. Like I'm gonna go and do it. Yeah. But yeah, no, the Masters is cool. I think
a sneaky good one as well. I'm not going to act like I'm some huge tennis guy, but I eat up Wimbledon a little bit too.
Really?
Like the semifinals and the finals Sunday morning. And, it's usually the two best players playing. Like, there's not too many upsets really in tennis. So, that's a sneaky one. I don't really have much interest in going across the pond just because there's so many places here in this country I haven't been to. But Wimbledon also is a bucket list item for me.
That's cool. No, that's fair. What about WrestleMania week? Did that do anything for you, Stone?
A hard pass on that one.
Yeah, fair enough. It is funny that I always talk about golf in a negative light. I think it is a form of protest for my upbringing because my brother back when you used to work at the Heritage and he was a member there at the Heritage, and growing up, he's 10 years older than me, so he got control. We slept in the same room. He got control of the TV in the room, and we did have a TV in the room. We're blessed like that. And it was always on the Golf Channel. Could not change it. Always on the Golf Channel. So I watched The Big Break and all of these golf shows, and it was just the only thing on in my room. So I think it's a form of protest for me to be like, even to this day, I go over to his house. He's watching the Corn Ferry Tour on. I mean, he just eats it up. He eats it up, and I wish I had passion for other things as much as he has passion for golf, but I do not. So that's a form of protest. All right, next question.
All right, here we go. Final question. Do you think they should just disband the Pro Bowl? Shedeur Sanders making it is a travesty, ? Comes in from the Red Baron.
So, which one? The Snoopy's fictitious adversary in Peanuts, or is this actually from the Red Baron from World War I?
The pizza guy. The frozen pizza guy.
Also that. Yeah, there you go. Those are great. Yeah. I did a big take on this. And I understand that I'm probably a little too harsh on Shedeur Sanders, but still I can't understand. I truly cannot understand how Cleveland Browns fans watch him and go, this is it. And I get that they have to have someone play quarterback next year, and they're going to be bad regardless, so just might as well run out Shedeur for another year. But there are fans that are like, I think he might be the guy. If you do that, that's silly. But yeah, I mean, what was it? Tyler Huntley, Snoop Huntley. Speaking of Peanuts character, Snoop Huntley's in the Pro Bowl. His second Pro Bowl, by the way. His second Pro Bowl. Listen, I'm okay with the Pro Bowl. Like I don't care about the flag football and everything. It's whatever. We cannot use it as a barometer for how good of a player you are anymore. The farce of a game that it's become is fine. I don't care. The players don't want to get hurt. I don't blame them. Josh Allen prefers to go play in a Pro-Am golf tournament than play in the Pro. That's fine. It's your life. Do what you want to do. C'est la vie. But you don't get to use it as he's a 4-time Pro Bowler. He's like the same way we do in baseball. He's a 6-time All-Star. Like we're not doing that anymore. We are not doing that anymore. Because guess what? Tyler Huntley's now a 2-time Pro Bowler. Joe Burrow's a 1-time Pro Bowler. T. Higgins is a 1-time Pro Bowler. So we just don't get to use it. I don't care about the state of the game. We cannot use it as a barometer for how good of a player is anymore, which it has been used since the Pro Bowl started. That's a Pro Bowl cornerback. And it's a different aspect when it comes to those guys, but we just can't do it. We're not allowed. We're not allowed. For the rest of the run of this show, you're not allowed saying, but he's a Pro Bowl guard.
Yeah.
So I'm banning it from the show, using it as a barometer.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have a take further on that.
Good call. Some things in sports, as I look at my life, there have been a lot of things in sports that have gotten better and some things decline. Like we had a great run. I remember growing up, we were talking about this the other day, watching the All-Star game in Major League Baseball. It was awesome. You could argue it was silly that the winner got home field advantage in the World Series. That's fine, but it still was awesome. Felt like it meant something, right? I remember some of those Pro Bowls in Hawaii early on when they're actually out there tackling. I was like, okay, it's pretty cool. Like, I'll tap in. But, we've lost the Pro Bowl a little bit. They got to figure out what they're going to do. But that's the key thing is, like, you can't use this as a parameter anymore. Like, if you're an All-Pro or second-team All-Pro, All-Rookie, all that stuff, that's the type of award that we need to be talking about. Not like, oh, this guy made the Pro Bowl. Who cares?
And I know we have the All-Pro.
Yeah.
But we have, I would like to have a substitute because the All-Pro is its own thing, right? You are the best at your position in the league or the second best in your position in the league. That means something. And it's both conferences. I would like to have some sort of substitute. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if that's possible to where we can still kind of use this Pro Bowl. I don't know what that looks like because I like the barometer. We're just not allowed using it now. We're just not allowed using it. So we're if you're the third or fourth, then you deserve some recognition. Yeah, he was really good this year. Was really good. The same way that we do in All-Star games for baseball. And you're out on the MLB All-Star game too?
It's better than the Pro Bowl.
It is better.
Yeah.
It is better. I think a great deal of that is just getting older. Just getting older. So, when you're a kid, things seem a little more important. And that's just all it is. I think the All-Star game's still pretty special. The fact that they play each other all the time hurts, too. That was a big driving factor about how it was so cool. Is before 1995, they never played each other other than the All-Star game. and the World Series. And then from 1995 until, was it 2013, they played each other just in June. The American League and the National League did. So that adds to it. But I think the All-Star game is still pretty awesome. I wish they played it more competitively, if I had to be honest with you. I wish the guys, and I know that's a hard ask to ask Paul Skeens to go 5 innings in a worthless baseball game mid-season, but that'd be badass if we had Paul Skeens versus Tarek Skubal for 5 innings. One more question.
Is there?
Is that it? I thought that you said there was 3 left. I thought you said there was 3.
Let me look here real quick. I think that was actually it. Maybe I missed.
Okay, so I have a question that didn't make the mailbag yesterday.
Oh, nice.
And I'd love to know your take when it comes to the NFL. So for the longest time, what happened in the NFL is you get drafted by a team, you get your run with that team, and that's when we decided if you were good or not. And typically, if you're good, just get an extension, found a franchise guy, moves on. Very rare in the history of football. Very rare in the history of football did they move off of a franchise guy. That's why, we can do the thing about Andy Dalton here in town. He was a good enough quarterback that you keep around. Tua Tagovailoa. That's run his thing. But you extend Tua Tagovailoa because he was good enough to continue to be your franchise guy. He just was. But now we're seeing in the NFL these reclamation projects. We are seeing it started with Baker Mayfield. He leaves Cleveland, goes to Carolina, gets cut. Rams, goes to Tampa Bay. It's pretty good. Sam Darnold's now done it with 2 teams. So my question is this, Stone. Because of what has happened with Sam Darnold, what has happened with Baker, what has to a lesser extent happened to Daniel Jones and Indianapolis before obviously he got hurt, do we think that we will see teams stick with quarterbacks longer? Because for a while you got 2 years kind of. There's a barometer for a podcaster we listen to. They say by Thanksgiving of year 2, we know if we got you or not. We know if we got a guy.
Yeah.
Do we think teams are going to stick with guys longer based off of what we've seen with Sam Darnold, based off what we've seen with Baker Mayfield, or do you think it's even shorter than it's ever been?
Yeah, I don't think they'll stick with people longer. Just because you don't have success somewhere doesn't mean you're not going to have success somewhere else. It's all about fit. Really, in the NFL. Again, I've said this multiple times. If you're going to the Jets or the Panthers, and credit to the Panthers, they got to the playoffs this year, but if you're going to franchises like that, you don't have much of a chance, really. You could be an elite player, and you go to the Cleveland Browns or the New York Jets. That is a mountain to climb, and it might not even be a climbable mountain. So, just because you don't have success in your first spot doesn't mean you can't have success elsewhere, but as far as sticking with a guy that's been struggling for at least 2 years, I don't think the initial team will stick with him. But, yeah, to your point, the reclamation project thing, we're seeing it with Baker, we're seeing it with Darnold. I think maybe Mac Jones could be the next kind of that level of player where he gets a starting opportunity somewhere else and has success. But as far as the initial team staying patient, that's hard for me to imagine that'll be the case. Yeah,
it just seems like the more and more we go down this rabbit hole of the NFL being what it is and growing like it is, and there's so much money at stake, and there's so much at stake in this in the world we live in, where things happen quicker, news cycles are quicker, everything. You order something on Amazon and it'll get there this afternoon. The world is moving faster, so you've got to make decisions faster. It's hard to see you kind of work through those problems, but you should. Just think if you ask yourself, and it's a hard ask, the history of QBs that took some time to pop. Famously, obviously, as a first overall pick, and you're gonna ride out a first overall pick. And Peyton Manning showed success, showed promise from the get-go, but he has had 28 interceptions or whatever it was his rookie season. That's hard to imagine nowadays. That sometimes you do have to see things through. Sometimes you do have to let things play out, and you got to let things grow. And yeah, maybe the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns are doomed forever, and they cannot figure things out, which I've brought this up before. What does that say about Joe Burrow here in Cincinnati? But I don't know. It feels like we're maybe another good case study is the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young showed a little more promise here. He did. It's a difficult conversation is what you do with Bryce Young. Is he kind of in that Daniel Jones where he was with the New York Giants? But I don't know. It's interesting to see where we go forward when it comes to the NFL. Like it really does. I really do wonder if we will see guys get a much longer leash. At least these first round quarterbacks, to where right now you have about 2 years, to where you get 3 to 4 years to kind of really figure it out. Who knows? But you know who does know a thing or two about college basketball is the host of the Rebound Rundown, our good friend, our dear friend, Paul Frischner. Paulie Furcano, what is up, my main man? How are you on this lovely Thursday morning?
I'm great. Did you wear that Hamilton Joe's polo because you knew I was coming on?
So you don't know this. Obviously, you worked with the Hamilton Joes. I worked with the Hamilton Joes. You know who worked with the Hamilton Joes this past summer?
I think Paul knows.
I'm going to guess our boy Stone Shields worked.
It is our boy Stone Shields.
Let's go, Stone.
Yeah, it's a good pipeline. It is a good pipeline, an underrated pipeline here. And I mean, Luke West-Poley who's done a lot of stuff with Chatterbox. A lot of greats coming out of the Foundation Field.
When you look at the broadcasting community in Cincinnati, which is a very small fraternity of broadcasters, it is funny how often the Hamilton Joes just pop up here and there.
It is true. A lot of summers, a lot of time spent.
How are the Cable Dodgers doing? We haven't talked about them in a while.
I'm retired, Paul. I'm retired. I officially
retired.
Breaking
news or
No. So I mean, I'll shut it out. I played this past year. Okay. We were good again, but we can't win in the postseason. Feels like Sean McDermott in the Buffalo Bills, or maybe Justin Herbert in the Chargers. Listen, the wife was cracking down on adult baseball time. She's like, "You spend like 8 hours a week playing adult baseball. Maybe we should cut this out." And then she got pregnant, and she's like, "Yeah, Reed, this is it." And I was like, "You know what? That seems fair. That seems fair." Is now we got a bundle of joy coming our way here soon, so I can't spend time.
Well, if it was just one night a week, that's the thing. Like when you were trying to get me to play, it's the Sunday morning that's the real killer. If it was just like
disagree wholeheartedly, because and listen, I'm Catholic, you're Catholic, you go to mass, I go to mass. Outside of that, what are you doing on Sunday morning at 9 a.m.? Nothing. You're not doing anything unless you're going to go play golf, which again is a 4-hour endeavor. So it's the same thing. So I think the Sunday is a much easier pull than getting over there at 6:30 on a Wednesday. All right, I don't think anybody cares about adult league baseball on this show. You know who people do care about? It is our beloved Miami Redhawks, undefeated once again. And last time I had you on the show, I asked you, I was like, "Hey, what is the possibility of the Redhawks getting an at-large bid?" As they continue to knock off wins, as they continue to keep this undefeated streak alive, that's a question worth revisiting. Listen to Rebound Rundown this morning, and you proposed what happens if they go undefeated all the way up into the MAC championship. Is that what it's going to look like? Like, it feels like if they go undefeated in the regular season, almost regardless of what happens in the MAC, you kind of just got to throw them in, no?
Yeah, I do. The one thing I would worry about is whether the committee would feel like they're setting a precedent for other teams to just schedule like Miami scheduled this year, which again, as we've covered extensively, Travis Hill has said they tried to schedule more difficult than they did. But if other teams on purpose go out and put together a schedule, that's, sub 300, and then they try to get in the NCAA tournament by winning the games. But as I had somebody reach out to me about that in a different conference not too long ago, and they were asking me my thoughts on Miami and the whole deal, and because they were kind of looking, is this something that I'll tell you right now, there are teams around the country, there are conferences around the country that are very closely monitoring what Miami is doing right now. But my point was, at the end of the day, you can schedule as easy as you want, but you have to win the game.
Correct.
Because if you schedule like that, and then you go and you lose to, Mercyhurst in November. I mean, you think about this, Reed. Miami was down 13 in their season opener against Old Dominion. They were down 13 in that game. And if they had lost, this is not a story. Mm-hmm. I mean, a one-loss Miami team, I hate to say it, a one-loss Miami team is not the story that an undefeated Miami team is. It's just not, because you look at St. Louis. St. Louis is getting a ton of national pub. I love watching St. Louis. They're like one tiny little notch down because they have one loss. right? And so you're looking at Miami, you're looking at Arizona, the teams that are getting all the headlines everywhere, and it's because they're undefeated. So I think if they go undefeated into the MAC tournament, I think you have to put them in. I really do. I don't care what schedule you play, to go all the way through an entire season where your starting point guard tears his ACL. You go to your backup point guard, he takes over, and it's almost like you didn't miss a beat. To me, you got to reward that team. Well, like, what else are they supposed to do besides win the games that were in front of them? And they were asked to win games. They won them all. And then you're going to tell me that they lose in the MAC tournament championship game and they're out? I'm sorry. Miss me with that.
So how realistic, because I know KenPom has them favored, I believe they have them favored for the rest of their schedule, final 10 games. Like, how realistic is this? Like, can they do it? Like, can they get it done? I mean, I know you can get clipped at any time, especially when, you know, as you mentioned, Evan Ipsaro's hurt. Like, when that happens, you can get clipped at any time. But how realistic is that they run the table?
It's funny because my answer to this question is way different than it would have been if you'd have had me on 2 weeks ago. Because I think before that Kent State game, I would have said, yeah, that's the game that they probably lose. And it looked like they were going to. All Kent State had to do was get the ball in bounds, and Miami was going to lose that game. But they didn't. They couldn't. And to Miami's credit, a resilient group, they win again. And so that's where I keep coming back to. This is a group that just keeps finding ways to win. And I think the Marshall game on February 7th, that's going to be a tough game on the road. The tough thing for Miami here in February, Reed, is that they only have 4 home games left. One of them is against Northern Illinois on Saturday. That game is sold out already. So you get past Saturday, they only have 3 home games left. Ohio on the Friday the 13th. Hopefully that's not bad juju there. Ohio on Friday the 13th. Bowling Green on February 21st, which is probably their most difficult opponent of the season, but at least that's at home. And then Toledo on March 3rd. They have to go on the road to Ohio. They have to go on the road, to UMass again, who they just had trouble with the other night. Have to go on the road to Buffalo, who they needed overtime to beat. Have to go on the road to Marshall. Like, these are hard games in the MAC that they have to go and conquer. But who am I to doubt this team at this point?
That's a great question. You mentioned this Saturday, sold out Millett Hall. You were at the game this week where they had almost 10,000 filing into Millett Hall. And anyone who's been around Miami Redhawks athletics knows that Millett Hall has been a ghost town at certain times over the past few decades since Wally Zerbiak's been there. How was that atmosphere the other night up there at Millett Hall?
I was talking to Luke Westpoli before the game, who's obviously been around Miami for years growing up. I was talking to Chris Vogt, who covers the team very closely. I myself was looking back, even at pictures from this year when I was at the Mercyhurst game, which was their 4th game of the year. And I was looking at the crowd for that, which is, this season. And to see where they have come from back in November, even a couple of weeks ago when they were undefeated. And we went to that, it wasn't the Buffalo game. We were at one game before that. But the crowd, Reed, that game on Saturday, or on when was that? The other day?
Tuesday.
What day was that? Tuesday night?
Tuesday.
That game on Tuesday night at Millett Hall, to me, I've been to a lot of college basketball games over the years. That was one of the coolest atmospheres I've ever been to. You think back to Xavier and Villanova, you think back to the first 4 this past season against Texas, the crosstown shootouts are always great. But that atmosphere at Millett, because to me, it's everything that is good and right with college basketball this year. And I know Miami has a handful of haters because of their schedule. I understand, people want to say that they're just a MAC team that's playing their schedule and winning games. But sorry, that's not an argument I want to listen to when Miami right now is the best story in college basketball because they're everything that's right with the sport. They went to the transfer portal and got a complimentary piece in Almar Atlason, but they didn't build their whole roster out of the portal. They built their roster through retention and through freshmen. They have got their fan base engaged. They brought over 9,000 people to Millett. They're winning games left and right in the most exciting ways possible. Miami basketball is what this sport is all about. And the haters can get lost because this is why we love watching this sport. And for one, I really just hope that they keep winning, because it's just cool to see the fan base get so engaged. And it also gives hope to so many other schools and mid-majors and even high major programs that are trying to rebuild their programs to say, look, all it takes is winning games and you can get this back again.
Are you surprised by how well they're playing without Evan Ipsaro?
I am, because he was the second leading scorer on the team. He was not only that, he was the defensive lifeblood of the team too. Like, I had somebody ask me a couple of weeks ago, Paul, who do you think is the junkyard dog? Who's the defensive, the gritty guy that's going to dig in and be that kind of guy for Miami? And I said, well, the answer was Evan Ipsaro, but he got hurt. I mean, he was the defensive lifeblood of the team, kind of the overall leader to me from a point guard standpoint. And I mean, to go down and then to just pick right up where he left off. Luke Skowjak's been phenomenal. They win the game the other night without Skoljak because Justin Kirby and Trey Perry play well. Every time you turn around, you got a question mark, and they answer the question.
The Wright State Raiders, currently in first place in the Horizon League. You think they can win? Do you think they can win the league?
I do. I do. I think Northern Kentucky. Northern Kentucky was trending in the right direction a few weeks ago, and now they've lost 3 out of 4. And Wright State's in first place. I mean, look, they're 8-2 in the Horizon League. Michael Cooper, the freshman, has been really fun to watch this year. I think Wright State, with the way they defend, they are able to go out there and win games, create turnovers, get you out of your rhythm. There's a reason they're at the top of the Horizon right now. Them, Oakland, they're contenders at the top for sure.
The Dayton Flyers, and you had Cole Adams on who covers or follows closely with the Dayton Flyers and Wright State. Do we feel like we are nearing the end of the Anthony Grant era with the Flyers? Because it feels like it's kind of the same story every single year.
Yeah, I had somebody call into the Rundown the other day and ask me over under 1.5 coaching searches for the Rundown teams. And I said over, because I think you're going to be looking at Cincinnati and you're going to be looking at Dayton, I think, especially if the season keeps trending the way it was. In a weird way, you can almost excuse a loss for Dayton on that Philadelphia trip between LaSalle and who was at Temple that they played the other day. You can kind of excuse one loss there. It just feels like Dayton always goes out to Philly and takes their lumps for some reason. But to lose both and then to come back home and lose at home against your former coach who beats you at UD Arena for the first time, the optics are bad. The team doesn't look good. At some point, you just need a change. And it feels like right now, Anthony Grant is kind of running off of this, what 2020 could have been energy instead of what 2026 is. And they're just spinning their tires, doing the same thing over and over again. Anthony Grant's a great guy. He's an alum of the school. I know it's going to pain a lot of people for somebody that they feel like is really part of that Dayton family, and I understand it's an incredibly tough decision to make. But I really do think they're going to have to get a new voice in there this upcoming offseason.
Checking the pulse, because when we talk about Wes Miller, the fans are in unison when they go, Wes Miller's done. Checking the pulse of Dayton, is that the same story? Are they just done with this, or is it kind of
but it's not as – I think so, but it's not as unanimous as Wes Miller, because, look, the tough thing for Wes is that he's not a Cincinnati guy, so Cincinnati doesn't feel like they have any attachment to cut him, right? I mean, if he had been winning, great, but he's not winning, so let's find the next guy. For Dayton, I mean, he is a Dayton guy, and there are a lot of people around that program that love Anthony Grant, and for good reason. He's a good guy. I don't know him personally, but from everything I've heard about him from people I know that know him very well, they speak very highly of him. So to me, I think it's a more difficult decision. I think the fan base, especially in this 3-game stretch, has really seen that it's the same thing that happened last year, a 3-game losing streak after a great non-conference. This year's non-conference, they beat Georgetown, Marquette, Florida State, but all 3 of those teams have really stunk So those wins don't mean nearly as much as they thought they would going into the season. It'll be a more challenging decision for Dayton to fire Anthony Grant, or maybe they could also frame it as him retiring. Maybe they don't say that they're parting ways with him. Maybe they allow him the opportunity to say he's retiring. But 6 of one, half a dozen of another. They're still looking for a new head coach after this season, I think.
Paul Frischner, host of the Rebound Rundown. You were asked by someone on your show, over under 1.5 coaches fired. Over 1.5 teams looking for a new coach this season. Miami, favorite to win the MAC. Wright State, favorite to win the Horizon League. Northern Kentucky could sneakily win the Horizon League. Dayton could win the A-10. I mean, it'd be tough. It'd be really, really tough, but they could sneakily do that. Xavier and UC aren't going to make the tournament. Over under 1.5 teams from the Rebound Rundown make the NCAA tournament. You taking? What are you taking?
Ooh. Well, I cover Kentucky and Louisville too. They're going to make it, but I'll throw them. Well, I shouldn't say it 100%. I mean, if Kentucky really keeps putting up performances like the other night, they could slide out. From north of the Ohio River.
Sure. And Northern Kentucky.
In Northern Kentucky.
Sure.
Including Kentucky and Louisville, I'll take under. I think one team gets in.
Okay. Fair enough. All right.
How brutal is this, Reed? This region used to mean something in college basketball, man.
Listen, I have faith in one side of Cincinnati basketball, college basketball, that'll get turned around here in a hurry. I don't know about the other side, but I mean,
look it up. It can turn around quick. I mean, Richard Pitino. I think when Richard Pitino gets a full off season this upcoming season, and he can go to the portal, and he has the money and the resources and everything he needs to develop a team with the amount of talent at the Big East level to win games, they'll be able to do it. Cincinnati's going to hire a new coach. Hopefully, that new coach can just slot in right away. And, they'll pump some money behind him. They'll be able to turn things around in a year or two. Maybe it could be the same way with we could be seeing a renaissance of the area, but this season, man, thank God for Miami and, for stretches here in Northern Kentucky as well. They've had some frustrating ones too, but thank God for Miami.
We talked about Wes Miller, and it seems like a foregone conclusion that he's gone. But any decision-making that needed to be done was kind of taken out of the hands of UC by the NCAA changing the transfer portal rule, and that it doesn't open until after the championship, which, of course, is after April 1st, which is when UC would have to make that decision on Wes Miller if they have to buy out or whatnot. That pretty much finishes kind of any conversation about Wes Miller, no? Like, if there was a conversation to be had at all, that does it. That seals it.
I think so. I mean, look, it's January 29th right now, and Cincinnati still hasn't won a game away from Fifth Third Arena. That game against Arizona State on Saturday, that kind of felt like the bottoming out. And it could get worse. They have a really tough February schedule, but they're going to go into games that they aren't expected to win. They should have won that Arizona State game, and they didn't even look competitive in it. When you listen to Wes in his post-game press conferences or on the radio with Dan and Terry after the games, it almost sounds like he's resigned to what he knows is coming, all right? He sounds dejected. He doesn't sound as energetic as he always was. It just kind of feels like he knows that it's a lost season right now, and it must be a helpless, frustrating feeling for him, but that's where they are. And, I think that what I'm interested in, Reed, is let's say Cincinnati – let's say they make the Big 12 quarterfinals and they lose in the Big 12 quarters. Are you just going to sit on your hands for 2.5 weeks knowing that he knows he's going to be fired? They know they're going to fire him, but they don't want to do it until April 1st just because of the buyout. Like, it feels to me like there are some legal things in there that they could do. I mean, I'm no lawyer, but it feels to me that like they could be able somewhere to say, hey, if you want to be available in this upcoming coaching carousel, let's just call it now.
Right.
But from Wes's side, why give up $5 million?
Right. That's a lot of coin. That's a lot of coin. Is there? I think I've asked you this before, but is there any coaches that you're really circling as would be not just pipe dream hires, but really attractive and make a lot of sense fit-wise for UC if they do go the route of getting rid of Wes Miller?
Yeah, the two names that keep coming up are Jared Calhoun and Josh Schertz. Now, there are going to be some really interesting openings in college. I think this is going to be a fascinating coaching carousel in college basketball because there are a lot of coaches that are on the hot seat, and we'll see if the schools decide to make a move on those coaches. But there are a lot of schools, and some high-profile schools too, who could be open. And so to me, that makes you wonder, does Josh Schertz kind of have a pick of the litter to want to go wherever he wants, or does he want to stay in St. Louis another year or two and continue to build what he's built out there and really dominate the A10? So I would say Josh Schertz and Jared Calhoun are the two. Jared Calhoun, obviously a ton of Cincinnati ties. Schertz is a fantastic coach. Outside of that, Tony Skinn at George Mason has done a great job there, but I'm wondering if maybe he should be at George Mason another couple of years just to continue getting that head coaching experience. We've seen what happened at Kim English, had a couple of years at George Mason, went to Providence, and it hasn't worked. A younger coach. Like some of these guys, they just might need a little bit longer at the mid-major level to make sure that they know what they're doing before they get the high major call.
Years ago when Mick Cronin went to UCLA, Cincinnati was an incredibly attractive job. They have since joined the Big 12, which is obviously a great basketball conference. Is it still an incredibly attractive job, in your opinion, Cincinnati?
Yeah, I think it is because they have the NIL resources to put behind a coach. I think that the Cincinnati job, is it the first pick for a coach in this upcoming carousel? We're going to find that out based on what are the other jobs that come open. But it's going to be toward the top of the list in my mind, if not at the top of the list of jobs that come open, because they have the NIL resources to put behind a coach. They're in one of, if not the best conferences in the country right now in the Big 12, who's having a historic year. They have a great arena, so from that perspective, all these coaches care about it's NIL, right? Like the facilities discussion is years in the past, but sure. Yeah, I mean, is it the best job in the country? No, but I don't think anybody's arguing that it is. I think Cincinnati is an attractive enough job, Reed, to directly answer your question, that they will have a pick of the coach that they want to come be their head coach. They'll be at least in the conversation for pretty much anybody they want this upcoming offseason.
Is it as attractive as a job today as it was back in 2019? I think that's when Mick Cronin left. 2020. Yeah,
I guess not, just because they haven't been to the NCAA tournament in that long, and that definitely does lower things a little bit. But I mean, look at Villanova. They went under a bad stretch for a few years under Kyle Neptune, and now they're firing again under Kevin Willard. So with the right coach, you can get this program back to where it needs to be. It might not be quite what it was in 2018, 2019, right, when you're consistently in the top 25. But that's just an optics thing. The donors are still there. The fan base still cares. And as soon as you start winning games, the Cincinnati fan base is going to fill Fifth Third Arena again like crazy. And all it takes there is the right coach.
Okay, fair enough. Paul Frischner, host of...
All it takes is the right coach, though.
That is true. That is true. Paul Frischner, host of the Rebound Rundown. Thank you so much for hopping on today. Always a pleasure talking with a fellow Hamilton Joe broadcasting alum.
That's right. Go Joes.
That's right. See you, Paulie.
See you, Reed. See you, Stone.
See ya.
Paul Frischner, host of the Rebound Rundown. And he's doing a really, really great job. He's covering all the local college basketball teams. I think he's probably right. I mean, I'm not an exact. I'm not gonna give an exact odds line, but like the one question I asked is, will this area get two teams in the tournament? Which, by the way, a month ago we'd be like, that's crazy. Of course not. Now, between Miami, 21-0, nationally ranked, favored to win the MAC, and they could even make it as an at-large bid if they win. It's a huge if they win these final 10 games, which they will be favored in all of them. You've got Wright State, who's winning the Horizon League. You got NKU, who's slipped recently, but could win the Horizon League. And you got Dayton. And listen, they haven't won the A-10 in a long, long time. They haven't won their conference tournament in a long, long time. And there's some really good teams in the Atlantic 10 Conference. But Dayton could win the A-10. Now, of course, the two biggest teams, or at least the ones in power conferences here in Cincinnati, Xavier and UC, they're not making the tournament. But it's an interesting question. And also is how many jobs are going to be open. Dayton's is a very attractive job. UC's an incredibly attractive job. What are those coaching searches, if they do move off Anthony Grant, if they do, as we suspect, move off of Wes Miller, what do those coaching searches look like? Where are they pulling from? What are the names? So it's going to be an interesting final month and a half of final 6-7 weeks of college basketball. And it's going to be an incredibly intriguing 3 months here in Southwest Ohio. Regarding what happens with these teams. I mean, the only one that is for sure, I mean, there's two, I guess. Richard Pitino, he's going to have an incredibly intriguing offseason because he's going to have his first full offseason as Xavier's head coach, and I think he's going to have some NIL support. And I think he's a really good coach, even though they blew another second-half lead yesterday. So that's going to be interesting. UC is going to be looking for a new head coach, more than likely. Dayton's going to be looking for a new head coach, maybe. Will Miami be looking for a new head coach? What happens if Travis Steele takes a job? Wright State, they could have a great year. Darren Horn and NKU seems it's just a really intriguing time for college basketball here in Southwest Ohio / Northern Kentucky. But any big takeaways? Did you think anything was interesting that Paul said throughout that interview, Stone? Other than the fact that he also was a Hamilton Joe's alum?
Yeah. It's the narrative around Miami is shifting a little bit. Like when they got on this run to start the year, it was like, well, they got to win the MAC or it doesn't mean anything. As far as going to the NCAA tournament, seems like maybe there's more of a path at this point where they could stub their toe in the MAC tournament and still have an opportunity to be an at-large bid, which I think is promising. I totally agree with him. If they lose that game to Old Dominion, they lose that game the other night to UMass. Like, maybe there's people that aren't showing up for the game this Saturday against Northern Illinois. So it's the fact that they're no blemishes, 0 on that win-loss column is why this thing is such a big story. And they've faced adversity. They've been down and out and have, grabbed victory from the jaws of defeat many times already this year. So it's a heck of a story, and hopefully they can keep it rolling.
Blackmore, who's been a member for 25 months. Thank you so much, Blackmore, for always tuning in and being a supporter here at Chatterbox Sports. He said, I should have asked Big League Paul Fritcher, if we can get him and Sharon Peters on the show at the same time. There's a chat that used to be more active, but sometimes they get active in the chat, named Sharon Peters. And there's a conspiracy that they are the same. I will openly say that I don't think Paul is Sharon Peters. I do not. I don't share that conspiracy, but I should have asked him because he would have eaten that up. But guys, thank you so much for being here. As always, Stone, have a great show here in the 11 o'clock hour. I will be here tomorrow. More than likely. We'll see about next week. I think next week's when things really get dicey. But thank you guys so much. Today was a fun show. Yesterday's show was a fun show, and I'll tell you what, guys, I really have fun doing this. So, love you guys. See you tomorrow. Off the bench. Stone Shield Show coming right up.
Ready we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. We are here. We are live. It is Thursday, January 29th. Appreciate everybody making us a part of your day here at Chatterbox Sports. We certainly are very grateful for that. We do have a super chat that came in right at the end of Off the Bench from CMelly24. Appreciate that super chat there. As always, appreciate all the support from everybody out there who tunes in to what we do here on a Monday through Friday basis. But an exciting show yesterday. Reds bench coach Freddie Benavides, he joined the show yesterday. Had a great conversation with him. That interview is up on YouTube. Check it out if you haven't done so already. Also, of course, available in podcast form there as well. And we have another special guest here on today's show in about 10, 11 minutes. Jeremy Rao, sports anchor, Fox 19, will be on the show. Looking forward to talking Bengals with him. Ask him a few Reds questions there as well, but we're going to kind of be turning the page here into the Bengals offseason. Not going to spend a ton of time dissecting all of the things that went wrong for the 2025 Bengals, but we'll talk cut candidates. We'll talk draft targets, extension possibilities, right? DJ Turner, Dax Hill, Chase Brown. We'll get his thoughts on that. We'll ask him if he did any work with Paul Dehner's mock offseason sheet. So that will be a great conversation there. Also ask him about the Joe Burrow restructure, if that's going to happen or not, and potential Trey Hendrickson tag and trade. So that's coming up in about 10, 11 minutes. Jeremy Rao, Fox 19, looking forward to that conversation. Also, we got to spend some time talking about the coaches in the AFC North because I've supported Zach Taylor for a long time. Obviously, he's got to get better. The past 2 years, unacceptable to have the players in which they have and not make the playoffs. But kind of hard to believe that you have guys like Harbaugh, Tomlin, and Stefanski in this division. They're all gone. Taylor keeps his job, and I think now the Bengals are in a great spot because, you could make the argument that Mike McCarthy's a better coach than Zach Taylor. Obviously, he has a resume. I think Mike McCarthy gets a lot of disrespect. Just didn't really feel like that was the move that Pittsburgh needed to make. But I think there's an argument that you can make about Zach Taylor being the best coach in the AFC North, and we obviously all would have laughed at that before any of these coaches got fired, but that's just kind of where we're at right now. So we'll talk about that a little bit here on today's show. As I mentioned, we'll talk with Jeremy Rao in about 10 minutes. Bengals, Reds, maybe a Miami question. We'll spend a little bit more in-depth time talking about Todd Monken. Monken, of course, has been named the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. Lots of drama out in Cleveland here at this point. Jim Schwartz, their defensive coordinator, apparently, they wanted to keep him in place as their DC, but he felt a little disrespected. He thought he should have gotten the head coaching job, and he's like, you know what, I'm good. I got no interest in sticking around here and being the DC. San Francisco is a name that jumps out immediately, a potential Robert Saleh replacement there for the 49ers, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Giannis, NBA trade deadline is next week, and the Bucks are absolutely horrible. Bucks, of course, have won a championship with Giannis, and people have speculated for a couple of years now that the two sides not exactly seeing eye to eye here at this point, and there's a real world where he gets moved. Shams reporting that there's a couple teams in the mix to keep an eye on: the Miami Heat, the New York Knicks, the Golden State Warriors, and the Minnesota Timberwolves are four that certainly jump out to mind. And that would be interesting because if you get Giannis, I think you kind of immediately become a contender if you're one of those four teams. And Golden State, obviously, really struggling. You kind of question whether or not they're a well-run operation anymore, which when they were in their heyday in the dynasty, Bob Myers is their president of basketball operations calling the shots, their general manager there as well. They were well-respected. Obviously, they had a lot of superstars, but they were a well-run operation. You question whether or not that's still the case here at this point with the Golden State Warriors. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And Giannis next year, I don't think there's a world where he comes back with Milwaukee. So no guarantee that he gets moved at the deadline. But a player of his caliber, you add him to that Minnesota team with Anthony Edwards in place. Team that, of course, has been to the conference finals before in the Minnesota Timberwolves. So lots of intriguing possibilities for Giannis. So that was kind of the news of the NBA world yesterday. Also last night, the Cincinnati Bearcats pick up a win. Dan Skillings makes his return to Clifton, his return to Fifth Third Arena, there with Wes Miller. And, I don't really have any huge takeaways from the game. Baylor, that's not the Baylor team that won the national title. That's not the same Scott Drew team that, is always in the mix as kind of a powerhouse team the past couple of years. They're having a down year, and Cincinnati favored at home. They should have won the game. They won the game. is that really a needle mover? Unfortunately for Wes Miller, probably not. And, it's a big win for them at home, but they're one game above 500, and they're going to have to go on a heck of a run if things are going to change there. But positive, they got the win last night. Not the most exciting crowd. Certainly not what Millett Hall brought to the table a couple of nights ago against UMass in Oxford, Ohio. But a win nonetheless for them. And the Xavier Musketeers, which this is such an odd year for Xavier because the expectation level coming in was not high at all. Rightfully so. Kind of assembling a roster last minute, not much NIL resources being shipped around there for the Musketeers. First-year head coach Pitino, but they've had a lot of opportunities to win some more games. I think right now they've overachieved when you just look at their record, but they have multiple other games that they could have or should have won. They had a huge lead in the second half against St. John's over the weekend and a huge lead at halftime against Seton Hall last night there as well, and just a complete no-show in the second half. So they got to get more consistent, but I still think that when you look at all these teams here in Cincinnati, apart from the Cincinnati Bengals, because the ceiling with the Bengals is just so high with the superstars that they have, Xavier basketball is heading in the right direction, but they just got to figure out a way to play more complete basketball, because that's a good Seton Hall team that they matched up with last night and dominated the first half, and then, of course, got dominated in the second half there as well. So we'll talk a little bit of local hoops there on the show. Had Paul Frischner on off the bench. Rebound Rundown does a tremendous job covering all the teams in the area. And who would have thought that the Miami Redhawks would be kind of holding the torch for the college basketball teams in this area. But appreciate everyone, as always, hanging out with us. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. On our way to 22,000 subscribers here at the channel. Follow us on Twitter at Seabox Sports. Follow me there as well at StoneShields _ and at the Stone Shields on Twitter. Also on Instagram at the Stone Shield Show. And we'll continue to pump out daily content here for you guys. And again, as always, if you don't watch live, totally fine. You can find the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review. That really does go a long way. But let's start with kind of the coaches here in the AFC North. As I mentioned, I've supported Zach Taylor for a long time, but I didn't act like he was the best coach in this division or even a top 3, really, coach in this division. I think you can make the argument with him and Stefanski, but football people out there would probably say Stefanski probably has, a step above on Zach Taylor there. But he stays in place, of course. Tomlin, Harbaugh, and Stefanski all are out. And then the huge question for the Bengals as the offseason kind of began was, okay, how's this division going to look? Because when you look at these NFL football teams, the two most important spots, and there is no debate, is quarterback and head coach. And your division, right, that's 6 games that you play each and every year, obviously playing all 3 teams twice. That goes a long way in what your season's going to look like with some of these hires that were made. And based on how the offseason has gone to this point, it seems like everything is going in Cincinnati's favor. There's a lot that needs to happen, right? Obviously, advantage number 1 is you came in 3rd place in the division, so you got a 3rd place schedule for next year. That obviously is beneficial. And then you're kind of looking at this head coaching search across the rest of the division. And Mike McCarthy is a guy that, again, I've brought this up multiple times on the show. I don't understand why he gets so much disrespect. Is it a branding issue for Mike McCarthy? Like, people just don't take him seriously for whatever reason. You align his resume with John Harbaugh's, and it's basically a reflection of one another. They're both in their early 60s. Both have a Super Bowl title. Both win a ton of games. Both have had some shortcomings in the playoffs. But people look at John Harbaugh like he's Bill Walsh, and people look at Mike McCarthy like he's Jim Tomsula, right? Which is just absolutely crazy. So I don't think it was necessarily a horrible move for Pittsburgh, but at the same time, it just kind of feels like they're in purgatory, right? That's not a move that's really going to transcend you. That's a move that's going to keep doing what you're doing, which is win 10 games, maybe get in the playoffs, and then get blown out, and that's kind of where you're at. That's just kind of purgatory, right? I'm not usually in favor of going belly up, right, and completely hitting the restart button. Well, if there was ever a time to do it, it would be in Pittsburgh. But I think that's an advantage, right? I think he's a good coach, but I don't think he's Mike Tomlin, right? So you have McCarthy twice a year as opposed to Tomlin twice a year. I'll take that. Minter in Baltimore. There's a lot of people that view him as a up-and-coming guy that has a chance to be that next superstar, right? And, obviously his path very similar to Mike McDonald, who's having a ton of success in Seattle, right? Were assistants for both the Harbaughs, worked at Michigan as a coordinator, worked in Baltimore, as a defensive coach and a coordinator. Now he's going to get an opportunity to be the head coach. I'm not all in on Jesse Minter. Again, maybe it ends up working out. I give him a lot of credit for how he cleaned up the defense in Los Angeles with Harbaugh immediately. But then again, he had Harbaugh in place. Now he's got to go do it on his own here in Baltimore with an expectation level that's really high. And he's got to cater to the franchise quarterback. Who are they going to bring in to be their play caller? And that's a huge decision for the Baltimore Ravens. So you're seeing, a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago, everyone was saying, you know what, the right move is to bring in an offensive guy, somebody to really help your quarterback, and that should be your head coach. You're seeing teams kind of shift a little bit more back to defense as some of these guys have some more success. Shoot, look at the Super Bowl. Vrabel, of course, with New England, and McDonald, of course, for Seattle. Defensive guys, but who they hire at that coordinator spot is huge. And then lastly, the Cleveland Browns. We talked about how that search was kind of really a mess for them. When you look at these jobs, I mean, the Browns have kind of been a laughingstock for as long as I've been around, right? They're kind of in the same category as the Jets. They certainly have a lot more talent than the Jets and maybe are a little bit more functional than the Jets, but multiple people kind of removing their name from consideration when it comes to their head coaching opening, and then they get left with Todd Monken, which, considering the circumstances, I think, is a win for Cleveland just because, looked for a while there that they were going to be resorted to promoting Jim Schwartz, their defensive coordinator, as their next head coach. But they bring in a guy in Monken who has some experience as a head coach in college at Southern Miss, has been a coordinator for a long time, worked closely with Harbaugh, won a couple of national titles with the Georgia Bulldogs and Kirby Smart, but it's hard to imagine that that's going to be their guy for the next 5 to 10 years. Almost kind of feels like a bridge head coach, right? You talk about bridge quarterbacks all the time. Well, it kind of feels like a bridge head coach, right? I think Vegas tried to do that a little bit with Pete Carroll. That kind of blew up in their face. Carroll, great coach, got a lot of respect for him, but, age catches up to everybody at some point. He didn't have any help either on his roster, but it's hard to imagine that Cleveland makes this move with Monken as kind of their long-term guy that they hope to build success around for a really long time. But we'll see. But the whole point of me going through all that is to say that the Bengals offseason to this point, before we even get into the draft and free agency, feels like a lot has gone in their favor because Harbaugh, Tomlin, and Stefanski are out, and you replace them with some solid guys, but I don't think there's really an argument that they're even close to the same level as the 3 guys that left. All right, it is time to welcome in our guests. We've had Gabby Sorrentino on the show. We've had Joe Danneman on the show, so that means we got to get our friend Jeremy Rao on the show there as well. Jeremy, what's up, man? Appreciate you stopping by and making some time. Oh, Jeremy, it looks like I'm having a little hard time hearing you. I cannot hear you. We've had this issue a couple of times in the past. Is your mic unmuted? I'm sure it is on your end. Okay. So sometimes with Chrome, usually you got to check off your permissions or whatever. So you're on Chrome, right? I know that's what I told you to do in the email. Okay, it looks like Jeremy is going to leave and then come back. So we'll get Jeremy in a second. Sometimes this happens. We'll figure it out, but appreciate everyone's patience here as we walk through this a little bit. But easy workaround. We've had this a couple of times where depending on the web browser that's being used, it can be a little bit difficult, but we'll try again here. Jeremy's back in. You want to check for me now, Jeremy?
How about now? Can you
Hey, there we go. Yes, we're here. How about it?
Right, let's go. Hey, thanks so much for having me on the show. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but man, I'm glad to be here. Glad you invited me, and ready to talk sports, baby.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks so much for stopping by. Are you staying warm out there, Jeremy? Because I'm driving in today, and my car says -4, and I am not a fan of the cold weather at all. But how are you holding up?
So my defense against the cold weather has been simply to just not look at whatever the temperature is. So whatever it is. I'm just diving into it. I've got extra layers on. I'm throwing extra coats on the kids so I don't get arrested as a parent when they go to school. But no, I'm trying not to look because I don't even want to know what it is most of the time.
Right. I'm right there with you. Well, hopefully we can get through it in a few weeks. It'll turn in the right direction. But let's dive right in here. I want to spend some time talking about the Bengals, of course, and then maybe we'll make some time for the Reds there at the end. But Paul Dehner Jr. released his offseason sheet. Have you messed around with that at all? You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. I have not messed around in the sheets, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I do know Paul has released it. I listen to the Growler podcast often, and they do great work. But yes, it's a fun project. I know that.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that you have to work through on the sheet is some potential extension candidates for the Bengals. That's kind of where I want to start here. There's really three names that jump out. Chase Brown, of course, Dax Hill, and DJ Turner, kind of the three names that are up for an extension, I would say, this offseason. We'll start with Chase Brown. Really, his career to this point in Cincinnati has been awesome. 5th-round pick, running back out of Illinois, and ever since he's been inserted into the lineup, he's done a great job. Now, the question is the success that he's had, is that because of the guys that he has around him, and a Joe Burrow and a Jamar Chase and a T. Higgins, and, of course, at the running back position, which is a position that gets undervalued a little bit in the National Football League, I think. Do you think, in your mind, the Bengals should move forward with an extension with him this offseason, or do you kind of sit back, let it bake a little bit more, let him play another year, and worry about that next offseason?
Well, I do know the Bengals have at least been in touch with Chase Brown and his agent already. So they are trying to get the ball rolling. How far that ball rolls this offseason, we will see. I know historically in years past, especially when you think about recent major contracts with T and Jamar and everything else, there's been some drama attached to this. Even going back to Joe Mixon, when he got his second contract in Cincinnati, you might recall that Joe Mixon during training camp had an extra dentist appointment or two where he wasn't at practice. He did kind of the hold-in thing a little bit, wanting to get his new deal. So usually this doesn't get done quickly. And the other thing is, while the Bengals have reached out to Chase Brown in his camp, it doesn't mean that they're going to come to an agreement on a number right now. We all know that. I would imagine the Bengals are going to try to get Chase Brown at a bit of a discounted rate, considering that running backs a lot of time in the NFL right now do not get a second contract,
right,
or an extension even in a lot of places, because of how today's game is, where it feels like, okay, if you don't get this guy to stay or re-sign him, extend him, whatever it is, you can go get the next one in the draft and develop him to be the kind of guy that he can be in your offense. I'm not saying the Bengals aren't going to try to extend Chase. What I'm hedging against is I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't happen soon, if it doesn't even happen before the season starts, because, again, the running back position, while it is, Chase Brown is a great running back, and he deserves a second contract. The way the Bengals have been historically, I think this could be one, again, that ticks off Bengals fans. I wouldn't be surprised if it does.
And what about the two on defense? Obviously, Dax was here a year earlier. He was a first-round pick. Bengals picked up the fifth-year option on him. And then DJ Turner, who had kind of gotten benched a couple of times throughout his career to this point, and then, boom, really burst on the scene and has an unbelievable year this past year for Cincinnati. What are you thinking about those two guys getting a potential extension? And of those three, is there one that kind of sticks out to you above the other two that has the best chance of getting one done?
Yeah, the one that I would get done without a doubt, make sure you lock it down, is no surprise to Bengals fans, and that to me is DJ Turner. Again, That is no shade against Chase Brown. I love Chase Brown. He's a great running back. I hope he stays in Cincinnati. But considering how things go, as I laid out with running backs in the NFL and that extension or second contract possibly dragging out, I think DJ's the one you have to get done right now. Look, he should have been a Pro Bowler. I think we all know that. Didn't get the shine he should have this year. Could have been All-Pro. All those things, when you look at what he did at the cornerback position, he's a guy you lock up right now who won't cost you a whole ton of money. And Dax Hill as well. I would get him done as well. Look, the NFL, getting lockdown corners, not that Dax Hill has always been a lockdown guy, but he's growing into that role, is not a given in the NFL. We have seen in years past what happens with this team when you let a guy like Jesse Bates get out the door and how much it can change the entire complexion of a defense. To me, if you have two corners who you believe in, who you saw produce at a high level in a season where you're trying to find guys that fit into a defense going forward, I get those guys done no matter what right away, Dax and DJ, and then see if you can make the numbers work with Chase Brown. That one I think will play out a little more dramatically, but as weird as it might sound to Bengals fans, I would lock those two up and I would start with DJ.
The next aspect to this is then some cut candidates, right? Paul predicts that the Bengals will probably spend around $35 million as it relates to the cap, but that number could go up if they make some cuts. I think there's a couple of obvious ones out there. I think Cody Ford certainly stands out, Burks as well, the linebacker as well. And then you get to the interior defensive line, and you get some questions with a guy like B.J. Hill and T.J. Slayton. What are you thinking with those two guys? Do you think they're back? Is one of them gone? Do you think they're both gone? What are you feeling on Slayton and Hill?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have a great feel on exactly how the Bengals want to approach that just yet. But if I were just to speak on opinion right now, knowing how the Bengals usually operate, they operate with what they know. Now, Duke Tobin can say during an hour and 3-minute press conference that he wants to, have pressure to attack the defensive line. And certainly they do want to do that. But it doesn't mean, to me, just cutting a guy like BJ Hill, who they've known, who they trust. And even TJ Slayton, who I think actually had a pretty decent season this past year, I think is a guy who could stick around. Unless they're angling for something else, I don't believe the free agent market is great on the interior defensive line. I don't believe, and I've said this on our sports shows as well on Fox 19 now, I don't believe the Bengals should be drafting a guy at defensive tackle, even in the first round, to be a starter right away. It sounds like a great idea. These guys are absolute ballers in college. You can go through the guys that you could pick, obviously, and there are some studs. But I don't believe the Bengals should once again, a la Shamar Stewart or other guys in years past, even at linebacker, go get a guy in the draft as a high pick and say, that's our guy. That's the guy we believe in. So if you don't believe in the free agent class very much, to me, you have to believe in the guys you have in the building, at least for one more year. That, to me, says the Bengals go ahead and stick with what they've got, and that's BJ and TJ.
Another name that's gotten thrown around a little bit is Orlando Brown Jr. That would open up a lot of money, but I think the offensive line, we've been moaning and complaining about the offensive line for so long, and finally, the second half of this year, that was the best that I've seen, certainly in the Joe Burrow era. I would hang on to him and then maybe look at your future of left tackle, maybe in the draft or certainly next offseason there as well. But there seems to be a general consensus among Bengals fans that Dalton Risner, let's bring him back. And Dana predicts that would be about $4 million against the cap. Are you in that same boat where it's like, yeah, let's just kind of run it back with this offensive line and not ruin what was working so well?
Yeah, I think you have to be mostly encouraged on the offensive line. Dalton Risner is so much more than just a guy who came in and served a pretty darn good role this year. I think he is a guy who's already beloved in the locker room. You can see the All-22 film that's out there that Dalton Risner is retweeting of him running down the field, throwing a hand out to teammates, being that guy that's like, I got you, helping teammates on the field as well. Like the Bengals see all that stuff with him. The most important thing is obviously that he blocks well for Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's almost season-ending injury we know happened in large part because of Dalton's mistake early in the season. But I think Dalton did grow a lot. He showed a lot of promise at the end of the year, and I think he's a guy I would bring back. I would not move on from Orlando Brown Jr. just yet. We do see the writing on the wall in some ways, I think, with him. But again, I don't want to go chase a guy, let's say in the second round, and say, okay, you're going to be our left tackle day one. Go get a guy that can work behind Orlando, second, third rounds, possibly, have him work in that role. And if Orlando gets injured, he's had knee issues in the past. We know that. They go way back for him. But then you have a guy that's been working behind a veteran, and then he's ready to take that role. And naturally, that transition happens instead of just saying, well, let's cut the guy, let's do something desperate. To me, that's where I land on that.
My take this offseason has been if Joe Burrow and Caleb Downs play 17 games for the Bengals next year, they will 100% make the playoffs. I want some early draft thoughts from you. I know a lot of Bengals fans are drinking all the Kool-Aid on Caleb Downs, which I think is the right thing to do. Is there any other names out there that you've got a close eye on? I know you probably haven't fully dove into the draft yet, but any early draft thoughts here at this point?
Well, I mean, I think the two names that you're hearing the most, and this is going to be no surprise to anyone, is Ruben Bain, obviously, out of Miami, and then Caleb Downs out of Ohio State. The reason why I prioritize Caleb Downs so much more than a Ruben Bain, if he is there, is because, again, as I've said, I don't want to go draft a guy that I feel like has to be a starter playing 75% of the snaps right away. I know Ruben is a beast. I've seen him play a lot. Trust me. I get it. But I still think he's going to be somewhat of a rotational piece early on if they go get him. And that's not a bad thing per se. But to me, Caleb Downs is a guy that you can play day one, that can be in there in the mix, and is a guy that's so physical, getting downhill at the line of scrimmage. He can be a game wrecker in some ways. And in this new NFL world where you need a little more of that nickel guy, right, on defense, that is exactly what Caleb Downs can be. Not a guy that all the time you're 100% relying on, but certainly in certain packages, certain looks, he is a vicious kind of player that can help stop the run, that can tackle well. Caleb Downs, I watched a lot of Caleb Downs, and I'll just admit, as a Buckeye fan in college, right?
Yeah.
I can recall him, honestly, missing a couple of tackles
Right.
at Ohio State.
Yeah.
He does not miss. And that, to me, more than anything else, as cheesy as it might sound, is the biggest thing he brings to the Bengals. They need more guys on that defense who just don't miss tackles. Other guys start to see it. Other guys start to follow that leadership, want to play that way. To me, that can set the tone for not just a defense, but an organization going forward. He's a guy, and it's no shock to many, that if he's there, I sprint to the podium and take him.
Totally agree. If they were in a spot where he's there and they go in a different direction, I definitely would be frustrated, to say the least. But there's another offseason topic that I feel like might be getting under-discussed a little bit, and that's the possibility of a contract restructure for Joe Burrow, which you see some of these successful teams in the NFL do it. Most notably Philly, right? Just kind of pushing money further into the future to allow you to spend more in the short term, which obviously could come back to bite you in the future. But my mindset is, like, you got Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. They're all in their prime. Go be aggressive right now. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know all the inner workings of what that looks like to restructure a contract. But in your opinion, do you think that's something that Cincinnati would entertain this offseason to open up some more room?
So I don't know how often Joe Burrow opens up an Excel spreadsheet. I know he certainly likes to dabble in Pokemon,
Right.
piano,
Yep.
Legos, yada, 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 fashion. Joe Burrow needs to become a pro in Excel. And if I'm Joe Burrow, I get an Excel spreadsheet. I do my best to figure out kind of what I've got, what we need, and what it might look like. Maybe he invites his agent over and they have dinner over it, right? To me, my number one priority would be, because Joe Burrow's got enough money, obviously, my number one priority would be is to figure out a way to say to the front office, okay, here's what I can do, here's what I can change, here's what we can get. The most important thing for Joe Burrow has to be finding a way to help this defense immediately get better, because we have seen it with Joe Burrow, obviously. He is exhausted right now by the losing, by the injuries, by the trajectory of the franchise right now and where it's going. And is he going to retire or leave or ask out after this year? I don't know. But he certainly, I think, has water ready to boil. Like, he's right there. And to me, the best way to fix it, if he feels like the organization isn't going to make the greatest moves or the best decisions, is to get in that room and show them, if I restructure, okay, this is what we can do. This is who we can get. I got some friends. I'll text them right now. Like, I'll help you out. And we already know from asking Joe, I did in a late season presser about meeting with the front office in the offseason. That's going to happen. Duke also told me, Duke Tobin, that they certainly value Joe Burrow's opinion. Like, don't make it this pie in the sky thing. Yeah, we talk. We're in community. Have that meeting, that conversation where you lay it out and make sure the defense is fixed right now by getting the dudes you need.
Does that worry you at all about him potentially playing elsewhere? Because, you know, this organization, do they frustrate us a lot? Yes, they do. But my takeaway is like, well, you know what? We have Joe Burrow. Sign me up. I'm going to watch. I'm going to cheer him on. We got him. I'm still happy. Is there a world, if they miss the playoffs again, where he's like, you know what? I can't do this anymore and I want out? Obviously, you know, it's just speculation. But do you worry about that at all as a fan?
I think it's natural to worry about that. I think based on Joe Burrow's mood and tone late in the season, it's natural to worry about that. The one hang-up I always have when I think about that is I don't know that Joe Burrow wants to abandon his buds. So T. Higgins is signed through 28, Jamar Chase through 29 like Joe Burrow, and that's where I struggle the most when I start thinking about that. And you're going to see 1,000 other fans and fan bases and teams, maybe not 1,000 teams, but several other teams, obviously, trying to convince the world, convince the internet, like the Vikings. I don't know why the Vikings have been like one of the biggest ones on this. They're in my mentions all the time of how they're going to get Joe Burrow and how they're going to make it happen. Like, I don't realistically see it happening. And that's why I have such a hard time with the Joe Burrow's done after this year. But I do think an unhappy quarterback, unhappy wife, unhappy life. It's the same thing for an unhappy quarterback, especially a star like Joe Burrow, right?
Yeah.
So for me, that's why this is such a big season. But realistically, if you want to get real with yourself, I don't believe Joe Burrow is going to do it because I don't think he wants to leave T. Higgins and Jamar Chase hung out to dry and just say, I'm out of here. I don't think he will do that. But I do think, as he said to us, he is struggling right now to find his joy and purpose in football. Yeah. That is the last thing you want with a guy who won the national championship in 2019 and led the Bengals to the Super Bowl in 21 and almost back in 22. You don't want this complacent, joyless travel downhill to where he loses the very guy he is, and that's a stone cold killer.
No doubt. Trey Hendrickson. Hard for me to imagine him playing another down in a Bengals uniform. There's the question about could the Bengals execute a tag and trade, potentially get some draft compensation back there. What are you thinking? Is this a situation where he just kind of walks and he's somewhere else, or will they do a tag and trade? Any thoughts there?
Just my sense, I feel like he's going to walk. There have been plenty of times in years past where we've said, man, if the Bengals had done this, if they had pulled the trigger at the right time, look at what they would have gotten. It's giving them a little too much credit, I think, to say that they will tag and trade, have some kind of a plan for that works in their favor, and then get an extra draft pick or whatever it might be out of it. I think it's giving them a little too much credit, and I'm not trying to throw shade at the organization. I do think there are a lot of smart people in the building, a lot of people who work really, really hard. But just considering what they've been in years past and how they've dealt with stuff, I don't see them doing a tag and trade. I think this is the end of Trey right now.
I was talking about this before you popped on, some of the AFC North coaches here at this point. It was a division loaded with coaches, with Harbaugh and Tomlin, and Stefanski gets a lot of credit for what he's been able to accomplish. Those guys are all gone, and they get replaced with McCarthy, Minter, and of course Todd Monken now with Cleveland. Kind of feels like that went in Cincinnati's favor. Obviously, there's 6 games right there against those guys that I just mentioned. Kind of feels like the Bengals are in a better spot right now, and maybe Zach Taylor is the best or the second best coach in the division. What are your thoughts on how that's broke?
So it's weird to see Bengals fans and even outside of Bengals fans in some ways now saying like, oh, now we have the best head coach in the division all of a sudden. And I think there's a feeling of that. And it reminds me of when I was in junior high and going to a camp with all boys, and there were a couple of girls who showed up, and it didn't matter what they looked like. You were like, oh, it's a girl. It's a girl. I've seen all boys for like 7 straight days, and immediately that girl is good looking,
Right.
And to me, that's how it feels right now with Zach Taylor. Now, I think Zach has actually done a pretty good job, and maybe I'll defend Zach more than most would like me to, but considering the offense. But that's to me how it feels right now. It's like, oh, everyone else is gone, and here's Zach, the last head coach remaining, and now suddenly he looks like the best head coach in the division. I would agree with that, by the way. I do think it adds more pressure to Zach. Mm-hmm. I don't know how Zach's going to view it. He may not view it as pressure. He probably won't. But I think it adds more pressure. If you look at the schedule coming up, and we don't know how teams are going to shape up and shake out yet, I get it. But if you just look at the schedule and the opponents the Bengals have in 2026, I think there is a ton of pressure on them to get this right in year 2 of Al Gold, considering how I think they're going to address the offseason. And Zach, as the one example of consistency now in the AFC North, I think this is a division the Bengals have to win and a season they have to have.
A couple of Reds questions here, Jeremy, before we let you go. We had Freddie Benavides on yesterday, and he was like, hey, our starting rotation is the identity of our ball club, and I think we all understand that. A lot of us, a little bit frustrated that the Reds didn't go out there and add a top-of-the-line bat. They made the trade for Dane Myers. They signed J.J. Bleday. But in your opinion, was that a mistake not to do that to this point? And is there a world where they still bring somebody in to help out offensively?
I do think there's a world where they still bring somebody in. I think it's going to feel something like a Scooter Gennett kind of ad. And I know that's not a sexy kind of ad for Reds fans. It's not a big name like they might want. It's one of those guys that they find in spring training maybe late spring training, a la Scooter Gennett, who comes in and adds some pop, but isn't the big name that you're wanting. Look, we can talk about the starting rotation and talk about the extra guys they have. They probably have 6 or 7 guys who can be a reliable, or at least somewhat reliable starting pitcher right now. But we know how this plays out. The second that the Reds decide to take let's say a Brady Singer and try to trade him to get a bigger bat or whatever it might be, right? To dump that money somehow, someone big in the rotation gets injured, a key piece or two gets injured, and then you're up against it a little bit and potentially pulling out of AAA and going down that path again. So I think the Reds really like the depth that they have in the starting rotation. Obviously, they love their bullpen. So I don't see them pulling the trigger on this, just the way that they operate. I'm not exactly sure everything that Freddie told you in that department, but that's the vibe that I get. I think they will go the usual Reds route, hate it as you might, and getting an extra bat that provides some pop and some depth in spring training.
It feels like they're going to ask Sal Stewart to do a lot this year, and he's only 22 years of age. Obviously, when he got called up, it was exciting. Had some good moments in the postseason against the Dodgers there as well. But defensively, it's kind of hard to figure out, okay, is he going to play first? Are they going to try him at second? Could he play third? Is he going to be more of an everyday DH? Where do you think he will land? I'm sure they're going to experiment different spots for him, but like come opening day, where's Sal Stewart? Is he a DH or is he out there in the field?
Oh, this is a tough one. I think he could swing first base and potentially doing some DH is where I see him the most. If I had to bet on it right now, I think I would see him at first base on opening day, and that might create some problems for how other things play out. I get that. But I do think they like Sal a lot. I think they want to see what kind of a load he can handle. I mean, look, it's not one of those things where he's going to have to play every single day. This is not an Elly De La Cruz kind of situation, but this is going to be a year for Sal where he has a massively elevated role. At least they want him to have that and believe he can be a guy that can handle that. And to me, I see that playing out most often at first base and then some at DH. And we'll see how it shakes up because obviously guys can move all over the place and play a lot of different spots. Look at Noelvi Marte, right? It's just one example, obviously, for the Reds. A guy that got moved and has proven already that he can be moved. So you never know. But if I had to bet on it right now, I would say he locks in at first and then balances that with some DH.
And lastly, Jeremy, obviously they need the rotation to be really, really good again. But from beyond that, I think this team goes as far as where Elly De La Cruz can take them. We all love his upside. We all love the flashy nature that he plays with, the joy that he plays with out there on the field. What are some realistic expectations for him this year? Because I think there's a world where he can be like a top 5 player in baseball. He's got all the traits. He's got to clean some stuff up, obviously, with the routine stuff defensively. But realistic expectations for Elly here this year.
Yeah, I see a growth for Elly again this year. He was dealing with, as we were told, an injury a lot of last year, so less stolen bases. He wasn't as aggressive on the base paths. I know that. I also think he dealt with, his sister passed away. There were other things in the mix for Elly. He was also learning how to play every single day, and he wanted that. But sometimes in the mix of that and the grind of that, you can lose some of the joy that just comes with coming to the ballpark and being ready, mentally locked in every single day. Your body starts to feel it. We know it was that way for Elly. And talking with Terry Francona at Reds Fest, he said he already has seen a maturity in Elly this offseason, even going into this next year, understanding what it does take to play every single day. The patience that comes with that, understanding the long game. But I think the most important thing, to not drone on here, is that Elly has to come with a locked-in mindset every single day, as difficult as that is, so we don't see those routine errors in the field. Those are the things that he has to clean up, where he just gets sloppy at times, and I think that is where I want to see the most growth for Elly this year is on the defensive side. As far as at the plate goes, we saw his discipline grow a lot last year. I think that keeps trending up. Talking with Barry Larkin and even Tito, I think they both strongly believe that Elly is on a great track there. I would see another all-star season. I could see him pushing for MVP this year. I think all those things are in the cards, but I do think it begins with him understanding what it means to lock in every single day. As difficult as that can be, he knows what it looks like now.
No doubts. All right, great stuff. Jeremy Rao, appreciate you joining us. Why don't you tell everybody where we can find you on social media, if there's anything exciting at Fox 19 that we got to know about? And are you guys going out to spring training again? Is that going to be happening?
Yes, we are.
Cool.
So first and foremost, my coworker and I, Joe Danneman and myself, are heading out. I think it's the day the full squad reports around February 15th, heading out for a few days. So we'll be out there here in just a couple of weeks or so. Cannot wait, considering the weather right now. So we'll have spring training coverage for you out there for several days. You can follow me on X at Fox19 Jeremy, FOX19. You can follow me on Facebook, Jeremy Rao, WXIX. And then as far as just our shows go, we call them our babies, the ones we love the most. It's Friday night final quarter, high school basketball coverage. Yep. And then Sunday night right now at 11:30, we have Cincinnati Sports Show. That's kind of our off-season show where there's a lot more talk and some long-form stories when Bengals breakdown isn't happening during Bengals season. But other than that, follow along as you can. I'm always blessed to be able to talk sports here in Cincinnati. I've been doing it here for 12 years now and hope to do it for a lot more time.
Yes, sir. Awesome. Well, I appreciate the heck out of you making some time for us here on a Thursday. Would love to do it again soon, my friend, and stay warm out there, all right?
Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Jeremy Rao, Fox 19. He's been at it for a while, does a tremendous job. As I mentioned, we had Gabby Sorrentino on. We had Joe Danneman on, so we had to, of course, get Jeremy Rao on there as well. Some great insights from him, and that interview will be out on YouTube later this afternoon. Of course, you can find it in podcast form there as well. It'll be interesting. These extensions for the Bengals, usually you go into an offseason, it's like, well, any of these guys could be cut. There's really only a handful of guys that could potentially be cut. Maybe there's a surprise cut here and there. But those 3 extensions that we talked about with Jeremy are going to be critical for this team going forward. So check out that interview if you missed it. Appreciate Jeremy Rao stopping by here on today's show. A little bit on Todd Monken here before we transition into this Giannis Antetokounmpo conversation there as well. And I mentioned this a little bit. Previous head coaching experience for Monken at the collegiate level. I think the Browns got to be kicking themselves for how this thing went. Look, they were never going to be the most intriguing job, but I think they should have been better than the second to worst intriguing job, right? I think it's pretty clear that the Cardinals, nobody wants to touch that with the 10-foot pole, right? And then it kind of felt like the Browns were next, which organizationally I get it because of their history, but from a personnel perspective, you got Myles Garrett. That's the best defensive player I've ever seen in my lifetime. He's on that team, and he still's got some good years ahead of him. Just broke the sack record, right? You've got players on that defense. You've got a running back who hopefully can come back and be healthy for you, but you're really just trying to figure out that quarterback position, and I don't know. I feel like it should have been viewed as a more attractive job, but then Barry and the GM, or Barry and the ownership group, they're like, yeah, we're gonna have you write essays here, take personality tests, do homework, and people are like, yeah, we're removing our name from the conversation. Now, is it those 3 things that made people remove their names? I have no idea. But I just felt like the Browns could have executed it a little bit better. But I do think for them, considering how the chips had kind of fallen, I think getting Monken is positive. I think he deserves a crack at being a head coach. Kind of mentioned this earlier, how you have that bridge conversation a little bit, right? You talk about bridge quarterbacks all the time. Are they kind of going like a bridge head coach here where it's like, well, we didn't get the guy that we really wanted, so we're just going to give it to Monken and give him a couple of years and see what he can do. I don't know. We'll see. And also, what are they going to do at the quarterback position there as well? Are they going to stick with their Pro Bowler, Shedeur Sanders? Are they going to go back to Dylan Gabriel? Or are they going to go back to the NFL draft? Are they going to go back to Joe Flacco? Are they going to try to sign another veteran quarterback? They've just been in a world of hurt at that position for my entire life. And they had a guy in Baker Mayfield, and they were like, well, he's not good enough. We're going to ship him off. And of course, Baker has completely revitalized his career since then. But it's tough to get that position right. And until you get that position right, you do not have a chance in this league. But if they can find somebody, if Andrew Berry can go get somebody, or maybe Shedeur Sanders can become the player that a lot of people thought before the NFL draft, when there was speculation that he could go to Cleveland but go number 2 overall and not be a day 3 pick guy. Can Todd Monken get that out of him? I don't know. He's a good play caller. We've seen this. How is he going to handle calling the plays and being the head coach? I would assume he's calling the plays, right? Because that's how he was able to get this job, by being a play caller. That's something that I don't understand sometimes with these coaches. For example, Aaron Glenn, right? He got the Jets job because he was a great defensive play caller for the Lions, and then he didn't call plays for the Jets. So it's like, well, that's what got you the job, and then you're going to stop doing it. That's kind of a bit of a head scratcher for me. Saleh did that when he was with the Jets there as well, and I don't know if he's commented, but he better be calling the plays for the Tennessee Titans, right? To me, that would be a massive mistake if he didn't. I'm sure he will adjust considering how things went in New York, but Monken's going to be calling the plays, I would think. And if you're Shedeur Sanders, you got to be excited about it because he knows what he's doing offensively, and we'll see if they stick with Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel. I mean, it would be tough to draft another one, right? Especially in the first round with a weak quarterback class. But it seems like the Browns, they get their guy late. Is this really their guy, or was this like option 8 for them? And it's like, well, we want him over Jim Schwartz. I don't know. But yeah, it's going to be another critical draft free agent period for him. But it's hard to imagine them not being in the basement of the AFC North once again. But teams, of course, come out and surprise you. Shoot, look at the Bears this year. Look at the Patriots even this year, right? Quick turnarounds can happen if you get the right head coach and quarterback in place. Can Monken be that guy? I don't know. We'll see. But I think he deserves the opportunity, and I think it could have been a lot worse for Cleveland. The way it was trending, right? Nobody really wanted to be the head coach. And it's like, all right, you're just going to promote Jim Schwartz? No. And now he's all upset. He's like, screw this. I'm leaving. I'm not going to be the DC for the Browns. And I mentioned this at the top of the show. I think Shanahan, keep an eye on that. Because for Kyle Shanahan, who I think is tremendous, when he hasn't had Robert Saleh, it's been difficult for him in San Francisco. So that DC hire for the Niners is huge. Gus Bradley has been a name that's been mentioned a lot. But Jim Schwartz, to me, feels like a top-of-the-line guy. And Jim Schwartz is, polarizing figure. A lot of people around the league, outside the league, that don't like him. But you've heard Joe Burrow talk about that Browns defense, and he has said for multiple years that he thinks it's the best. And a lot of that, obviously, is Myles Garrett, but a lot of that is Jim Schwartz and what he does defensively. So that's going to be a hot name DC-wise. And if you're the Browns, you're kind of kicking yourself, right? Again, I don't know if they didn't see this coming. It's funny that, he's all upset about it and storming out of the building. He's like, I'm done with this, whatever. But, can you really blame him? Because felt like they were kind of leading him on a little bit, like, oh, you're going to be our next head coach. Then actually, we're going to bring in this other guy, Todd Monken, right? Not like you're bringing in Ben Johnson, right? So I'm sure that frustrated him a little bit, and he's going to, he didn't want to be in Cleveland anymore, and I'm sure his services will be wanted elsewhere there as well. All right, let's talk about Giannis here for a second. Giannis Antetokounmpo. Milwaukee past few years has not been good. That roster needs a lot of work done to it. They're an old, aging, brittle group. But you look at Giannis's tenure in Milwaukee, and I think you have to say it's a success, right? Because nobody looked at the Bucks very seriously, and they were contenders in the playoffs multiple times, and they won the championship, right? Beating the Phoenix Suns a couple of years ago, and Giannis obviously had a great series, has won some MVPs, and just recently they haven't been able to put enough pieces around him, and it hasn't resulted in many wins for him. But I think there's a world where he gets moved. Shams reported yesterday at ESPN that Giannis has expressed his interest in wanting to be traded, and now the Bucks are starting to warm up to it a little bit as an organization, start to realize, we need to hit that reset button, right? What the Steelers need to do, right? And go to a different direction. It was a great run, right? If you're the Bucks and you didn't win that title against Phoenix, this is a heck of a lot more painful than it is now. Obviously, in their world, they would have wanted Giannis to be there forever, right? But all good things come to an end for the most part, right? And it's fascinating to hear these teams that are potentially in the mix here. And if I'm Golden State, I'm doing everything in my power to get Giannis to the Bay Area, right? Now, look, I'm a huge Steph Curry fan. You ask me who my favorite basketball player is in the NBA right now, I say Steph Curry. I don't think twice about it. He's still playing at a very high level. He's up there in age, right? He's only got, he could play for a really long time because he's a sniper, but as far as being the best player on the team and one of the best players in the league, probably only has a couple more years, I would say. Of that, you have injury concerns, certainly, and he's, he hustles on defense a lot more so than other guys. I'm not going to call him a liability on defense, but he's an offensive player, safe to say. But when you have that talent, and say what you want about Draymond Green, that's a Hall of Famer. I respect the heck out of Draymond Green, honestly, as a basketball player. Does he crash out a little bit too often? Sure. Does he argue with the refs a little bit too much, right? Has he had too many cheap shots maybe in his career? You can say all those things. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a really good player, and he still has good years ahead of him. So my point being, when you have Steph and Draymond in place, you have to go all in, right? And Steph clearly, and this could change, but seems like those two guys want to be a Warrior forever, and I think that's cool, honestly, right? It's not really reality. Like the Derek Jeter situation doesn't really happen. Shoot, look at Tom Brady. He doesn't finish in New England. Look at Peyton Manning. He doesn't finish in Indianapolis. Your Derek Jeters, your Kobe Bryants, your Eli Mannings. Doesn't really happen. Joe Montana ends up going to Kansas City, right? I think it would be cool if Steph and Draymond only played for the Warriors. But they got to go all in right now, right? And Jimmy Butler, they made the aggressive move to get Butler, won some games, and if Steph doesn't get hurt, who knows? Like maybe they're in the Western Conference Finals against I don't know if they've been playing the Thunder or how the bracket matched up there. Obviously, the Thunder won the title, but I respect the move for Butler. But now you're in a spot where he blows out his knee. And even before that, they were really struggling, got out to a solid start this year, but then really kind of went into a tailspin. You got Steph Curry and Draymond, and they did all that winning for you and your organization, your city, right? I think, to say your thanks, you got to say, yeah, we'll go all in. And it might screw us for, the next couple of years after, like, you're gone, right? Like 3-4 years from now, we might be in serious trouble. But you got to go all in for those guys right now. They won 4 titles, right? And, went to a couple of more. So I think Giannis would be a very interesting fit in Golden State with Steph and Draymond. Could he play with them? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know, because it's an exciting brand of basketball, lots of ball movement, lots of running back and forth. A lot of Giannis's game is like throw it into Giannis and he'll bully a bunch of guys and then dunk it, right, and just score a bunch of points that way, which I admit, watching Giannis, it's not like watching like Wemby when you're kind of like just in awe at how big he is and the skill that he has. Like a lot of Giannis's greatness, yeah, he's huge, but a lot of it's like he's just going to bully you, right? And I think there's a lot of times throughout his career where it's like, that's got to be an offensive foul, but they don't call it an offensive foul. So, but there's no denying how great he is and the production that he can have out there. How would it work with Steph and Draymond? I don't know, but if you have Giannis Antetokounmpo and Steph Curry on your team, you absolutely have a chance to win the championship, right? When you have players, 2 high-end players like that. So Golden State, I think, is fascinating. New York's been another name that has been thrown into the mix. I mean, it's a trade for Giannis, right? So you got to give up serious compensation in order to get him. Who do you move off of if you're the Knicks? Like, to me, I get New York being interested, right? But I don't know if they have a championship team right now. I think there's questions about Brunson and whether or not he can be the best player on a team that wins the title. He can be a great player the best player on a really, really good team, but the best player on a team that wins a championship, you got some questions there on whether or not that's true. Obviously, Giannis can be. We've seen that. But you would have to move off a lot of other players. Certainly, is Bridges a guy that gets moved off of in that situation? I don't know. New York's interesting, but of the 4 that Shams mentioned, probably not as likely. Miami, that could be very interesting with Spoelstra. He just wins, right? That's my takeaway on the Heat, where it's like you look at their team, it's like they don't really have any star power, right? They've got some solid players, but Spoelstra just knows how to win. But if he wants to win at a really high level, I mean, they got to the championship with Jimmy Butler, which is crazy. And Jimmy Butler's a heck of a player, but that's unbelievable that they were able to do that. But like they could, they're like a play-in team, right? They're kind of they're not going to get eliminated. They'll get to the play-in, probably get out of the play-in, but then from there, maybe win a series because of Spoelstra. But can they win a championship or win the East? No. With Giannis, yes. So that's very intriguing there, I think. And then Minnesota, that to me is the one that's like, whoa. Because if you put him with Anthony Edwards, now how are they going to, it's always the question with superstars. You put them together, well, how are they going to play together? It could be like LeBron and D-Wade where it's like, it's awesome, which, by the way, some growing pains there initially. Or it could be like LeBron and Russell Westbrook where you're like, this isn't even functional, right? So, I don't know. Somebody will see if the Bucks move off them. No urgency on their end to do it. They got to get a really good deal. You got to overpay in order to do it. But one of these teams should go all in trying to get Giannis because that would be unbelievable. The Lakers, I don't think, is in the mix. They're in the mix. That could be interesting, certainly with Luka. I mean, that'd be crazy. But I don't think their name's really in the mix. But Miami Golden State, Minnesota. Those are the three to me to keep an eye on. And, I think Giannis would love to play with Steph. Obviously, he's spoken very highly of Steph in the past. But that'll be fascinating. That would be great for the NBA if you get a move like that because, you want your star players to be in the playoffs, right? And the Bucks are going nowhere fast. So to get Giannis back on a team that has a chance to make some noise would be pretty cool. But we'll spend a little bit more time here going forward talking about the NBA. I love the NBA. I was at a game last night. Great game at the end. The Pacers were able to win. It's crazy the difference one player makes because no Halliburton this year. And I understand they lost Miles Turner in the offseason, but they are not really a functional team. But credit to them, they pulled a win after losing the whole game against the Chicago Bulls last night. Lastly, the Bearcats, I don't really have, to be honest, like a ton of thoughts on this, right? And look, I get it. We got to talk about them, Cincinnati team, right? But the Baylor team that they play, that's not the Baylor team that won the national title. It's not the Baylor teams of the past few years with Scott Drew where they're always, competitive and always feel like a threat. Doesn't feel like the case with this Baylor team. UC should have won the game. They won the game. You got the Dan Skillings kind of reunion. You just see Wes on the sidelines. I can't say I feel bad for him because he's had everything that he needs to have success, and he's getting paid millions of dollars, and inevitably if they move off him, he's going to be paid handsomely throughout that process as well. But, when there was high hopes when he came in, and you just kind of look at how the season has played out and how his tenure has played out, and he's come short of expectations, and candidly it hasn't been close. The university's backed him. The arena's awesome. From an NIL perspective, they've backed him. You get to play in the Big 12, which obviously is a challenge, but I think that's a good thing, right, that you get to play against that level of competition. So one day, if Cincinnati was ever to get back in the tournament, they feel like they can do some noise, make some noise, because they just beat some of the best teams or played some of the best teams in the country all year long. Hasn't really worked out to that point. I don't know if there's anything he can do. I know it's kind of like a broken record here, but, you just got to get through the year, hope a run's in him. They had the upset against Iowa State. That was nice. I think we all know Iowa State, they weren't the second best team in the country, but they're going to have more opportunities throughout their schedule to come up with some big wins. Wouldn't surprise me if they got a couple, but it's hard to imagine him being back as the head coach of UC next year, and you'll begin to start that process. Paul Fritchner threw out a couple of names to keep an eye on. The St. Louis coach, the Utah State coach, the Miami of Ohio coach. You can't help but throw his name in there a little bit too as well. You imagine that if you're Travis Steele, Xavier, Miami, UC. You could have 3 huge jobs and not have to move, technically. I know he just, I think, bought a house out in Oxford, but pretty amazing if he's able to pull that off. But hard to imagine him not being a top-of-the-line candidate unless Miami just completely falls on their face. But, especially if they get to the NCAA tournament, obviously if they win a game in the NCAA tournament, but even if they win the MAC and clinch a bid, hard to imagine he would be back. I don't know. We'll see. Obviously, we will see there on that front. But that'll do it for this edition of the show. Appreciate everybody hanging out. Appreciate Jeremy Rouse stopping by, Fox 19, making some time for us. Great guy. We had great sports department over there at Fox 19, all of them. Tremendous. It was great having him on. That interview will be out on YouTube later this afternoon. And, of course, in podcast form, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate it. One more show this week. Tomorrow, I have another guest there as well, so looking forward to that. But that'll do it. Stay warm. And until tomorrow, take care, everybody.